By the late 1990s, Kodak was sitting on top of the photography world. It was the world leader in film-based photography, selling everything from high-end cameras to chemicals for developing films. If you had asked a Kodak executive then who they considered as competition, he would have dismissively listed others who were in the exact same business. Fujifilm, Sony, maybe Minolta. He would never have mentioned Nokia, or much less Apple, as competition. I mean, what do phone and PC makers have to do with cameras and capturing people's memories? But in the next 10 years, competition from phone-based digital cameras would decimate Kodak's business. As customers discovered, there was no need to carry a different device to take pictures, much less capture it on film and take it to a store for developing. The proud and esteemed Eastman Kodak Company, which came out with its first camera in 1888, was brought to its knees in a short span of 10 years because its leaders couldn't see the wave of the future coming. The story of the spectacular crash of Kodak, repeated in countless business school case studies, is a cautionary tale for the pharmaceutical industry of today. If you were to ask the CEO of Pfizer to list out his competitors today, the answer would be other big pharma companies like J&J and Sanofi. Maybe he might say competition will come from generic drug companies like Teva or Dr. Reddy's. It's unlikely he would ever name an electronic device manufacturer or a big data analytics company. But that's exactly where the future competition to the pharmaceutical industry is emerging, through the field of digital therapeutics, or DX. Digital therapeutics tend to conjure up images of high-tech diagnostic and surgical machinery, like the ones made by GE and Medtronic. Although these would qualify, DX in the modern world encompasses much more. Like the health apps that reside on the omnipresent smartphones, tracking our heart rate, blood pressure, daily calorie intake and burn rate. Our lifestyle apps that tell us everything from the best diets to follow, when to get our teeth cleaned, or how to track the menstrual cycle. There are apps and devices made for specific ailments like diabetes, which allow a patient to better manage this chronic condition. Compared to traditional reactive therapies like medicines, these proactive services have one big advantage. They put the patient at the center. So, Dr. Reddy's probably sells the same medicine to an 18-year-old diabetic and to his diabetic grandmother. But the leading digital therapeutics company for diabetes, Livongo, puts the patient at the center. They give personalized insights, connected devices, health coaching, and ready-made reports for doctors on a patient's unique health profile, his pre-existing conditions, and typical blood sugar swings based on time and food, so the doctors can prescribe highly specific drugs. They can do this because they traffic in the currency of the 21st century, patient data. In fact, Livongo gives all the testing supplies needed for diabetes patients absolutely free. In return, they require that all patient data captured by those devices be incessantly uploaded to their cloud servers, where algorithms work out unique patient profiles based on the measurements and do big data analytics to see diabetes trends in a home, a street, or a community. Players like Livongo are already eating into traditional healthcare provider revenue. One study found that Livongo users reduced their medical costs for diabetes by 17% and their emergency room visits by 21%. Now imagine what large-scale adoption of this service would do to pharmaceutical companies who rely on blockbuster diabetes medicines. With their inherent lean towards innovation, digital therapeutics companies also are more nimble than traditional players, who are more used to the decade-long drug development timeframes. For example, with the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic, Apple noticed that more users were interested in monitoring their blood oxygen levels. They were able to add an update to their popular Apple smartwatch to measure blood oxygen levels within a few months, while the pandemic was still raging. a product launch timeline that traditional drug companies can only dream of. More proof of the DX wave coming? A cursory look at clinicaltrials.gov shows close to 60 ongoing trials testing out digital therapeutic products in therapeutic areas ranging from mental health, cardiovascular disease, oncology, and orthopedics. When it comes to healthcare, digital therapeutics is the future, and drug companies would do well to not repeat Kodak's mistakes. Central to the healthcare ecosystem are payers, the person or company that pays for a healthcare product like medicines or a health app, or service like an X-ray or doctor's consultation. In underdeveloped healthcare markets like India, the payer is usually the person availing the product or service. So a patient would pay the full amount for a doctor's visit and any subsequent prescription medicine out of their own pockets. In these markets, paying for healthcare is not different from paying for any other product or service, like a chocolate or a haircut. But in most developed healthcare markets, payments for products and services are done through an intermediary, usually a health insurer. In addition to covering the cost of the healthcare product or service, these institutional payers also have administrative tasks, like processing patient eligibility, enrollment, and claims. Insurers could be private companies where consumers sign up for policy coverage in exchange for paying a premium, or public, where the payer is the government, which pays for its citizens' healthcare needs through programs funded using tax dollars. In reality, almost all of the world healthcare markets have a combination of payers, from patients doing out-of-pocket expenses to private insurance companies and government programs. What differs is the extent of involvement of each of these parties. So in India, a vast majority of healthcare payments are done directly by the patient, with private insurers and government programs taking much less space. At the other extreme are countries like the UK and Canada, which have single-payer healthcare systems. That single payer is the government, which taxes its citizens and pays all their healthcare bills. The single payer can either provide all healthcare services itself, as is the case with the UK's NHS, or it can contract out the services to third-party hospitals, diagnostic centers and pharmacies, and other providers. Either way, a single payer system brings economies of scale and tremendous leverage when bargaining for prices with providers. For example, if an Indian pharma company makes a new biosimilar for cancer, they have to negotiate and fix a price per dose with the Canadian healthcare system. Failure in these negotiations would mean forgoing the Canadian market altogether. Single-payer systems usually bring the benefit of universal healthcare, where poorer citizens are not left out of organized healthcare because they cannot afford to pay for healthcare out of pocket or premiums associated with private health insurance. On the flip side, the price controls associated with single-payer systems usually lead to longer waiting times for specialized services and fewer product choices as the number of providers are limited. So the average patient in the UK typically waits longer for services like colonoscopies, dental surgeries, and eye exams compared to countries where private insurance players dominate, like the US. In spite of these challenges, most developed markets from Canada to Europe and from Australia to Taiwan have healthcare programs that rely primarily on government payers. And public opinion surveys show that they remain widely popular with the general public. This is for good reason. The epitome of a free-for-all, privately led insurance market, the US suffers from price inflation, high administrative costs, and large sections of society being left out of healthcare altogether. So much so that there is tremendous public pressure in the US to move towards universal healthcare, as evidenced by recent legislations like the Affordable Care Act. Either public or private, healthcare payers have an important role to play when it comes to making products and services accessible and affordable. Technology is empowering more patients and consumers to make better health choices through everything from smartwatches that track your vitals and online resources that answer even complex questions about pharmacology. This means the healthcare ecosystem is being forced to make more and more patient-centric innovations. For pharmaceutical companies, this means moving away from focusing on the disease and instead focusing on the unique requirements of each patient, and moving away from one-size-fits-all medicines and services. So you as a patient does not get the same medication as your grandmother just because you may have the same disease indication. Patient-centric innovation ranges from the simple, like a paracetamol manufacturer making a flavored version for young children, to the more complex, where drug companies capture individualized data from volunteers during clinical trials, like on their genetic makeup and lifestyle choices. So they can come up with personalized or precision products, medicines which are as unique as the patient who takes them.